So thank you for tuning in to Stark's Reality. Now this week I was thinking that I was going to talk about something else, and then I caught wind of this article, and it kind of changed my trajectory like altogether, and it changed my mind about what I wanted to talk about because some of the pieces of this article has a lot of foundation and scope on what I intend for this podcast to be as a whole. Um, this article was originally an ad that was on my Facebook for the Wall Street Journal, and then I have a subscription to the Wall Street Journal because I gotta have access to information. So I use the Wall Street Journal often as far as getting information about stocks, as far as getting information about news, what's going on in the world, and stuff like that. But again, this article has a scope of a lot of the things and the principles that I try to drive home with this podcast. So if you read the title, as college was supposed to close the wealth gap for Black Americans, the opposite happened. Black college graduates in their 30s have lost ground over the 3 decades, the result of student debt and sluggish income growth. So this is talking about millennials, and as far as wealth goes, me falling in that in your 30s category, and a lot of my peers falling in that category. This is the age group of people that have a lot of kids who are going to raise the next generation. So if you see that 30-year-olds now are falling behind where their parents were at in this time in their life, what direction are their kids going to go? So I'm going to read through little certain parts of this article and then kind of go back to things that I believe are responsible for or whatever, or just comment on it in the most part. All right, so Black millennials thought college would help them get ahead. Instead, it set them back. That in itself is something that me and my peers talk about a lot. We talk about the fact that we were supposed to go to college and we're supposed to be good for the rest of our lives. All we got to do is do well in school, and then you go to college, you graduate from college, and you get a job paying you enough money to make it for the rest of your life. That turned out to be quite the illusion, because a lot of millennials in this age group fell into those Bush depression or recession years once they got out of college. So they went to college, they graduated, and there was nothing there. There was no job market. There was nothing paying much money. A good job was probably about $10 to $12 an hour in the early 2000s. 2000s to maybe 2010. Those were decent jobs as long as they had two numbers on the hourly rate. So millennials fell into the worst economic climate since the Great Depression. So yeah, we did think college would get you ahead, and it ends up setting you back, because if you come from less means, what you're going to do is you're going to get student loans to pay for it. You're going to get student loans to live off of, and that student debt is going to be sky high by the time you get out of college. And then you're already behind. You haven't bought anything. All you did was get that degree to try to get the job. So now you got anyways. So as you go on, it says the median net worth of households for Black college graduates in their 30s has plunged over the past 3 decades to less than 1/10 of the net worth of their white counterparts, according to the Wall Street Journal. All right, so it's no secret white people make more than Black people, as far as on a percentage basis. It's just like when they talk about that women make, something like 70 cents or something like that on a dollar to men or something like that, but they're really talking about white women to white men. And then you know that when it comes to Black women and Black men, those numbers are even less. Far less. So it's no secret that their white counterparts are making more money. We always knew that. That's not a shock. So The drop is driven by skyrocketing student debt, sluggish income growth, which combine to make it difficult to build savings or to buy a home. Now, the generation that hope to close the racial wealth gap is finding its way, it's growing wider. Of course, it is. If the first thing you have to think of is my student loan bill, right? Then you have to figure, okay, graduated from college, how much money did you get after you graduated? Get an open house or something like that. Probably isn't enough to put down on a down payment on a home, but you still haven't got a job yet either. So I look at this and it says they're finding it difficult to build savings or buy a home. All right, so how do we get around something like this? All right, the student debt thing. The cost of college is so expensive that it's hard to graduate without having student debt. So where do we go from there? All right. So how about the next part where you building savings? All right. So rule number one is always to pay yourself first. So if whatever check you get, whatever amount of money you get, you always put that towards you, towards your savings. So whether that be 10%, 20%, whatever, you have to make sure you get your money first before you pay your bills, before everything. You got to make sure you get paid, and so you can build that savings account. Also, we talk about here buying a home. Um, that probably used to be like the first thing people do, but you also got to think that marriages were probably more prevalent in past decades. People got married younger, get married, buy a home together, and the cost of it wasn't so bad. So here we are. Building savings is number one. Now, building savings that's a discipline that should probably come in those younger years, and I'm talking like preteens and stuff, where kids get it in their mind to learn to save, and it becomes a habit. To always have something there. Some people have open houses or something like that, and that probably could be the building block of giving you some savings to start with. But a lot of people got to live off that money because you don't have a job yet, so that sucks too. And I know I'm all over the place just on this on this one paragraph. I'm all over the place, but let's remember that build savings, and people aren't buying homes anymore. All right, so now down further, more than 84% of college-educated black households in their 30s have student debt, up from 35% decades ago. It's at 84% now. 8.5 out of every 10 college black graduates have student loan debt, as compared to 35% 3 decades ago. So we talked 3 decades ago. We're in 2020, so we're talking 1980s. That's actually even surprising to me when that guy from Morehouse paid everybody's student debt off for those graduates for that year. That was a pretty dope thing, but it's probably minuscule in the whole grand scheme of things. Like, yeah, that's awesome. That guy paid the student loans for that class of kids, and mostly all those kids. If 85% of black college graduates have student debt, he basically had a class where, since it's a black school, that means pretty much everybody in that class has student debt. Now you multiply that times every college in America, and how many black students graduate. Because contrary to narrative, black people are very educated. Black women are very college educated. Black men do get degrees. It does happen. 84% have student debt in their 30s. So I seem to get a bad rap. They get called lazy. They say they don't do anything. Millennials get accused of a lot. Now, if I'm looking further into on this article, and it says for black educated households in their 30s, their median income increased by 7% from the early 1990s to the late 2010s to about $76,000. Income for their white counterparts rose 13%, about $114,000. So, even though millennials are always said to be such a lazy generation, they're entitled. Uh, we look and we see that same theme of we look at these college educated blacks versus college educated whites, and we see that whites are making more money than the college educated blacks. These are statistics. These are not opinions. This is not the way I feel about things. I think there's a certain denial that I'm sure anybody who lives in America and wakes up every morning and opens their eyes and sees anything, there's a certain denial of the effect that racism plays on so many levels. And now we're talking about on a level as far as economics or income. You can't tell a person to work harder when your hard work only puts you further, just as far behind anyway. We got an even playing field of they're college educated, but yet and still, you can't say that this group works harder because they're both college educated. These are equal parts that we're comparing. But yeah, you're looking at $76,000 versus $114,000. It's not a secret what the cost of that is. It's pretty obvious. Their racial wealth gap exists because of racism. Plain and simple. Not much else to it. Now, we got a chart here. Median wealth of households by race and educational attainment. Now, this is going to be very interesting. Okay. So, white college degree. We're looking at from 1989 1995, $118,000. Now let's go to college educated from 2016 2019, $138,000. Now, whites with no college degree from 1989 to 1995, $62,000 a year. From 2016 to 2019, with no college degree, $45,000. Now that's interesting. Now, if you look at this, college educated from the past, they end up making more. It goes up to 138 from 118. If you didn't go to college in this era, you'll be making less money. Even though, you talk about the rate of inflation and all that, you're going to be making less money than you would have 30 years ago. All right, now here's the kicker. Black college degree from 1989 to 1995, $50,000. Black college degree from 2016 to 2019, $8,000. That's weird to me. How it can be $8,000. I got to read into that. So, the median net worth for black households with college graduates in their 30s has fallen to $8,200 from about $50,000 over 3 decades. The analysis found over the sample period, their white peers saw their median net worth grow 17% to $138,000. Net worth is calculated by subtracting a person's liabilities such as mortgage, college debt, assets, blah, blah. Okay. So these white college graduates are not graduating with significant student debt, and they're making more money coming out the gate because it seems like white people are making more money. They get higher incomes. So these black kids have all this student debt. They have a mountain of student debt, and they're moving backwards when they graduate. So these people, they only had about $5,000, $6,000 worth of student debt. So that's not a death sentence. These kids understand that they're going to be paying student debt for the rest of their lives. Now, if you go here, 1989, 1995, blacks with no college degree had a net income of $4,000. That kind of money don't go very far for very long. So this is probably why you see such an influx in black students taking on the student debt to go to college, because you don't want to be here, but they only ended up here as a result. So you go from possibly $4,000 to $8,000 net worth. Now, say as you don't go to college, you're sitting right in the middle if you're black. Say the net worth is $6,000, which is still not much of anything. Still ain't much money. $6,000 wealth. How much time? That's like what, 3 months at best. If you only spend $2,000 a month on living, that's 3 months worth of wealth compared to your white counterparts with $45,000. That'll get them through a year probably. This won't get you anywhere. No college degree. If you're white, you'll still be in a better position than blacks who go to college or don't go to college. Even if you don't go to college, if you're white and you don't go to college, you're looking at $45,000 of wealth in comparison to the blacks. And if you go to college, it's like astronomical, the difference. It's not even close. What's understood does not have to be explained. We know why these numbers exist. We know why these numbers are there. I don't even have to infer anything. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is these examples, these testimonials of people. So I'm going to read over this little section right here. So Keisha McKinney and her husband own their home. They have a Roth IRA, and they have 2 young sons. They're also limiting their spending, and they hope to retire by 45. Very admirable. Our friends call us the rich ones, said Miss McKinney, who is 32 years old and works for the Detroit City Council. But Miss McKinney also has more than $120,000 in debt from undergraduate and graduate degrees. She typically makes monthly minimum payments, but doesn't think she'll ever pay it all back. Student loan debt is hanging over my head like a rainy day, she said. $120,000 in student debt she has. So even though she may be a high earner and it looks like she's doing things, she's trying to retire early. Even when she retires, she's 32 now, wants to retire by 45. I don't know how realistic that is, but she still has $120,000 in student debt at this point, at 32 years old. In 13 years, she wants to graduate. She wants to retire. So she'll be retiring owing debt and still having that bill. When you retire, when you're done working, when you went to school and you went to college so that you can get a higher income so that you can do better for yourself, she's still paying the debt from before she started working. That's insane. College costs have soared over recent years, but black students get less help from their parents to cover them. Yeah, of course, because they only had net income or a wealth of about $8,000. But in 2012, 64% of white families contributed an average of nearly $73,000 towards their college-age children's education, according to a study of nearly 3,000. Oh, no. All right, back it up. 64%. So that's just over half of white families contributed an average of nearly $73,000 toward their college-age children's education. If I look at some of my peers and I wonder if any of their parents contributed $70,000 to their education, of course not. Because I'm looking and it says black students get less help, and by less help, they probably don't mean much of any. Very little help. They're dependent on financial aid They're dependent on scholarship money, uh, which is probably why you see when you look at a college football game or college basketball. That's why you see so many black kids playing sports. Because how else would they pay those high tuitions? Maybe that's why black kids focus so much on sports. But when we focus on sports, we miss out on so much other stuff as a result, because you got to put so much time in to be a great athlete. You got to put a lot of work in. It's tiring. And as a result, in a lot of cases, the grades are going to suffer because of that. 73,000, that really is a mind-blowing number, that white families can contribute $73,000 to their kids' college education if they choose to go to college. I think that's probably because they get started early. They start saving when the kid is born. How many kids don't have savings accounts, don't have checking accounts in high school, in middle school? These parents are putting a lot of money towards their kids' education or towards anything for their kids. I mean, if you got $70,000, like, you can start a business with that real easy. They got $73,000 ready to go because they prepare for it. I think there's a lack of preparedness for black people and for black families. And when I say lack of preparedness, I'm not saying that you should have that much to be able to put $70,000 towards your kid's education, but maybe $15,000, maybe $20,000. If you can put forth just a little bit of money aside into some kind of account, maybe they got college savings accounts now. You can get a financial advisor, get a financial planner, and you can start saving early, like when the kid's a baby. It's just like when buying life insurance. You buy life insurance when you're young. It don't cost you much. The older you get, the higher it goes. So if you buy it when the kid is like a baby, like, it's going to be cheap forever, and you get that same rate. $73,000. That's a big number. That's hard for me to get past. It's no reason that black students and versus white students and that student debt thing is so crazy, insane, such a difference. All right, now everybody knows price of college has jumped up. It's skyrocketed. That back in the 1980s, $10,000 for 4 years, $20,000 for 4 years, and then you look at these private institutions. Let me try not to say anything rude or coarse, but if you look at these private colleges and these private college hustles, when you look at the influx of those things, when they took off around the early 2000s, the late 90s, they took off, and you still got so many of these schools, and then you got these non-accrediteds going around and promising people like, oh yeah, come here and get a higher income, but nobody respects your degree. That's a sick thing. But I'm gonna keep on going because I want to talk about these people. All right, Mr. Wright. Let's talk about this guy. He's interesting to me. All right. His mom made sure he did his homework, and she pushed him to excel in school. He studied accounting on scholarship at Tuskegee University. Good for him. He struggled to make his student loan payments for a few years after he graduated. Mr. Wright now works as a finance manager in Washington, D.C. For an area defense contractor. He has a side business doing taxes, cooking, and taking photographs. This is an interesting individual. He went to school for accounting, something that, in my opinion, it's a degree that you can apply towards life. You can apply it towards your career. There's always going to be a need for people with that kind of knowledge. So I think he majored in a solid degree. Um, he says he struggled to just like everybody else would have to make his student loan payments. Now, this is where he differs. He has a side business. So he took that accounting degree and he made other income from it. He was like, yeah, I'm a finance manager, but on the side he does taxes. He cooks and takes photographs. I don't know where he makes the money from cooking. Maybe, sells dinners or something like that. And he's a photographer. So this man has a hobby that he's flipped over and turned that into income. And then he took other knowledge that he accumulated from his studies from going to college and has a side business as a result of that. So he's got streams. He's got his job, and then he's got 3 more streams of income. So he still owes about $14,000 in student loans, but the payments are no longer a burden. He also has an emergency savings fund. He has a 401k and investment accounts where he trades stocks and cryptocurrencies. This guy is like the reason, like this little section right here was the most important thing to me because he understands the blueprint. All right, so let's be realistic. Most black people at least, are not going to go and get a high income salary straight out of college. Now, accounting, finance managers, they don't make astronomical amounts of money. They don't make a whole lot. So what he's done is he's leveraged himself. He's takes his knowledge to add another business to it. Seasonal though, doing taxes. So that's like 2 months a year. So that's not going to kill him. He's cooking and probably selling food. Very high margins in cooking, but it doesn't say he has a restaurant or anything like that. So it's not that stressful. And then he's doing photographs on the side. He probably just likes photography. And it's like, well, I might as well make a few bucks off of it, right? It's more income. He does owe $14,000, but the money doesn't hurt him because he also has given himself an emergency savings fund, meaning he paid himself first. He's also putting money into his retirement. Now, I was going to do this episode on retirement and investing. That's going to be next, though. But he has a 401k investment accounts, and he trades stocks and cryptos. I don't know how many people don't even have an account for making their own stock trades. That's a conversation everybody should be having. A 401k and the investment accounts. So, like, that's his retirement. Like, how many people are not putting into their retirement? Rule number 1, get a savings account. Have some money on the side just in case something happens. Rule number 2, put forth for the future. 401ks, IRAs, investments. You got to put some money to the side. Most jobs will give you some money to put to the side for your retirement. Most places will have some kind of a match program, or maybe they just give you something to put towards your retirement. Are you maximizing the match? Or are you saying, like, I need the money now? Like, well, some of that stuff is going to be pre-tax. I think 401ks are probably pre-tax money. So that's coming out of your gross and not your net. This dude is abiding by the, and he probably has that mindset from going to accounting school. He also trades his own stocks and cryptocurrencies. Everybody's talking about trading cryptocurrency right now. Cryptocurrencies are dangerous and volatile, but they can also be very profitable. So you got to watch and understand and pay attention to what's going on. Like, you can't just wake up and say, I'm buying some cryptocurrency. Like, well, depends on where it's at. Because the rises are sharp and the falls are steep. But I think everybody should be trading some stocks and some cryptos. I mean, it's like, look, if you buy anything for your kids for Christmas, you can kind of look at those things that you buy for them and say, hey, maybe in addition to this, I'll buy a share of whatever stock this is for the kid. It's like, yeah, now you have ownership in the company in which you love, that you own, that you want. You know what I'm saying? But it is what it is. But this dude, like, I think these are the fundamentals. Emergency savings fund, put towards your retirement, and make investments. I think once you start to do these things and you start to look at that money and leave it to the side and don't touch it, that's when your wealth starts to increase. He also later bought a 4-bedroom townhouse. His mom cried when he flew her in to see it. We got to stop renting. There are certain circumstances where renting is your best option. Now, you live in California, in certain places, it's only a few $1,000,000 to buy a house. Not the best financial decision to buy a home in these certain situations and be hit with that. But the value of a home has jumped up by leaps and bounds lately over the last 10 years or so. So if you bought a home when the market crashed back in 08, I think it was 08, 09, if you bought a home then when everybody else was losing them, which was unfortunate, but if you bought one on the tail end of that, if you were in a good enough circumstance where you could buy a home at that time, the value of your home was probably doubled or tripled since that time. Home ownership is a bridge to wealth, because sometimes you can earn wealth on your home without putting a lot of money into it. So say you buy it at, let's use some even numbers, some easy numbers, $100,000. Say you buy a home $100,000. 5 years later, it's worth $120,000. So now you've built in, you didn't even do anything except own it. You were going to pay rent regardless, right? So now you've earned $20,000. You've got $20,000 as a result of owning that home, as opposed to renting it. Because when you're renting, you're still paying that same amount of money, but the equity goes to the owner of the home, which is not you when you're renting. I'm not saying that people shouldn't rent, but I am saying that a bridge to wealth and long-term money can be home ownership and following these other rules that this young man, Mr. Wright, has already set out for us. These are the rules: savings, investment, ownership. And if you can't make it off your day-to-day, you got to side hustle it. Use whatever it is, gifts you have. I mean, maybe you can cook. Maybe you take pictures. Maybe you could make money by giving advice to people or something like that. You know, there's a million ways to make a buck. More one way to skin a cat. And we got to take advantage of these things. And unless you do, these gaps will continue to decrease. And then also you have to instill that in the next generation. You have to install that in the youth so that they don't make the same mistakes we did and go to college and get a mountain worth of student loan debt for a job that won't pay you much more than if you didn't go to college at all. There's more to this, but I really just wanted to hit that guy because I thought that was... All right, one more, actually. This girl from Ohio State. Whew, I don't even want to talk about this one, but because it's gonna sound mean. All right, so Rastina Gooden graduated from Ohio State University in 2012 with a hospitality degree and about $18,000 in student debt. That's not that bad. Her parents, both college graduates, helped but couldn't cover everything after college. Okay, so let me slow down. All right. They helped, but they couldn't cover everything. She's got $18,000 in student loan debt. So these are college graduates themselves, and their kid isn't even in a position to have their college paid for. That probably comes from a lack of preparation or a low income. After college, she made about $50,000 a year in event planning, worked part-time at a local bakery, and started paying off her student loans. So she made decent money, $50,000 a year, and then had a part-time job on top of that. That's scary when you got to work on top of work. But she's young. When you're young, you can do that. I did that for a little while. And then one day, it killed me. I was like, yep, this is over. But that you can only do that for so long, have a second job. Ms. Good started graduate school at Vanderbilt University to become a minister. She was wary about emptying her savings, but wanted to give back to her community. She also felt a deep need to be recognized as intellectual. Okay. This is where the problem comes. She had a deep need to be recognized as an intellectual. She needs people to call her smart. You would be willing to put yourself in debt so people call you smart. This poor child. She wants to give back to her community. Okay, there's another issue. Young people don't have anything really to give back. You haven't done anything yet. She's 30 years old. She hasn't done anything. People usually will use those 20s. So she's just out of her 20s. She hasn't reached her high income years. She hasn't experienced a whole lot that she can give a lot of information to the community, and she doesn't have any money that she can give back to the community. She's looking at things backwards. It's better for people who are in the later stages to be given back to the community. Young people just don't have a lot to offer. They don't have a lot of income. They don't have a lot of money. They don't have a lot of knowledge, and they don't have a lot of wisdom because that comes with time. This makes sense. You'll see me as a whole person when you address me as doctor and see me as the smartest person in the room. The person who went to college so somebody else would call her smart and pick up $100,000 in student loan debt is the smartest person in the room. That's sad to see that she thinks that way. It looks like, back in 2012, she went to college, went to the Ohio State University, great school, to go for hospitality, and ended up with $18,000 in student loan debt. I don't know if I would even pay for a hospitality degree. What do? Work in a hotel or work in a travel? I'm sure hospitality ain't doing too hot in COVID. That's not really a degree that's recession proof. You got to depend on people having extra money to spend. But to each his own. She probably did great with it for a little while. It's probably not doing too hot right now. But man, to say I'm going to become a minister, and I have a need for people to recognize me as an intellectual. See, when you feel like you're important because you're a child of God, you loved by God, you're going to be a minister, but you need recognition from other people. That's a conflict of interest to me. When you say you will address me as doctor, that's egotistical. And I want to be the smartest person in the room. That don't really make you smart when you get somebody else's education. The smartest person in the room is the person who navigates the best with the resources they have, in my opinion. But again, I really didn't want to go too deep into these because I sound mean at this point. But she expects to graduate with $100,000 in student debt. She estimates that she will have to wait until her mid-40s to buy a home on her own. But her parents or a future partner might be able to help her. This is irresponsible. This is irresponsible, and it's sad. She's going to have to wait until her 40s to buy a home. She'll lose 20 years worth of equity, or 10 years worth of equity if she was to buy a home now. But she can't because she has to be called doctor. So she'll be in her mid-40s before she can buy a home. And that's probably only going to be dependent if she can find a man to marry her, or her parents are willing to give her the money. Let's learn from these other people's mistakes, people. Let's do right. Let's save our money. Let's make investments. Let's look towards our retirement. And let's grind. And then that's how we'll get there. That's all I want to share. That's the end of the article. Too much. Get that out of there. But I do want to thank you. I do want to thank you for listening. If you listen this long, all power to you. Hope it was entertaining. I hope it was informational. But I'm out of here. Greg Starks, Starks Reality. Have a good one. I'm out.